process that we take people through is, instead of just setting a goal, because then it's always set by that ego, that masculine energy, you should rather start with your core motivators, which I'm sure you know, but for our listeners, your core motivators are like those actionable values that lie underneath the level of your personality that guide every decision that you make. And so for me, that's freedom and independence and even significance and recognition.
Hello and welcome to the Real Success Show. I'm your host, Candice Mama. If you're at home and you're wondering how you're going to start that next great business, how you're going to find yourself again, and how you're going to start taking massive risk, then today's guest is just for you. Lauren Dallas is the CEO of Future Females. She knows all about starting a business from scratch and scaling it massively. But before we jump into that, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe if you love this episode. Now, without further ado, here's Lauren Dallas. Lauren, welcome to the Real Success Show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
Before we started the call, you actually shared with me that you just got a new puppy. How's that been? How's it been being a new puppy mom?
Oh my gosh, I'm so madly in love. She was abandoned, so she's just under 6 weeks old, which is very cute, but also means she can't fly. So there was a long trip back from Cape Town to Joburg, and then today she tried to drown herself, but she's fine, everyone. It's intense, but adorable.
Oh man, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than that, because I mean, animals are just so precious and they don't have a voice for themselves. So you always feel so much for them. Like, no, don't do that. Oh, but coming into it, Lauren, so how do you describe yourself? I know you've built an empire and you've done so many incredible things, but for those people who've never come into contact with your work, how do you describe yourself?
I'm a hedonist. I just literally love what I do. I love having fun. I love creating things, and I love helping other people do the same, and particularly women. I really believe in the fearless pursuit of your own joy. And for me, the path to that is entrepreneurship. That for me, it's the only key, and in my own life too, for financial, schedule, and location independence, and the freedom that we all deserve to have in this life. So that is what I truly believe in, and that's what I do every single day.
Oh, I love that, the fearless pursuit. That is so beautiful. And that's why you named your company, I'm assuming, Future Females, right? Where did that come from? Where did the idea and the name originate?
So the idea came because I'm not South African, but I'm based here now, and I moved about 5 years ago. And my background is in tech startups. So when I realized I couldn't start a business without actually knowing a single South African, I joined a tech accelerator program called Techstars. And it was incredible. There were 10 companies sourced from all around the world, 80 people on this program, and not one single female founder. And so that really lit the fire inside me. I was like, this is just not okay. And then I guess there was also the personal motivation, because I'd moved here, I'd found this beautiful ecosystem of men doing incredible things and being innovative in the tech space, but I couldn't find people like me. I guess I was even struggling to make friends and have those types of creative conversations. And my co-founder the same. So on the day after the accelerator finished, we just thought, let's have an event, let's see if anyone turns up, and we'll go from there. And that's what we did. We didn't really have a plan. The name, I just thought of it in my sleep, and I woke up and I was like, it's Future Females, because we want to look forwards and not backwards. And we want to build for the future and gain that positive forward momentum. And I think back then, that's what set us apart. We didn't want to focus on the problems facing women and the struggles and the gaps. We just wanted to focus on building something better.
Oh, I love that. And I love that it came to you in your sleep, as most ingenious things do. When you're doing something benign and you're not really thinking, then your brain's like, hey, this is going to be amazing.
For me, it's also after wine normally. I'm like, my best ideas, or I think they are, but this one was in my sleep.
I love that. But there has to have been, firstly, you said you were not originally from South Africa. So where are you originally from?
Isn't this accent obvious? It could be anything. I'm half English, half Welsh, but I spent 18 years in Australia and now I live here. So definitely have a nice blend going on.
Yeah, I wanted to say it's an amalgamation of different places. There's a hint of Australian in there. There's a hint of English and even South African. South African has crept in very quickly in there. So I love that.
Exactly.
So you said, okay, so you were in Australia for a while, then you came here. So have you always had a nomadic soul? Like what made you want to keep venturing and traveling?
Yeah. It's so great that you ask this. I've just started like a really deep practice of shadow work. And so some of the questions that I've been asking myself is like, actually why? And am I running from something or running to? And I think for me, it's always been a bit of both. I get very claustrophobic, and it's just because I'm not growing in my own space. And for me, I'm very physically connected to my surroundings. So I need to physically move. So I guess I've always been nomadic. Sometimes I've been escaping from jobs or relationships, but now in the last 6 years at least, it's really just for the joy and the experience.
Oh, shadow work. I love that. And it's something that, is becoming a bit more mainstream, hearing about, shadow work, dealing with the darker side of ourselves, or at least merging it into, all the light, because for a long time it was just light, 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 light. And people were like, I don't know, I've got a little darkness in me. How do I like merge the two worlds, And when you started, as you said, you just started your shadow work practices, what are some things that have come up for you that have maybe shocked you or you weren't expecting to find?
Oh, I can share a really good one. Actually, I can share a book as well for anyone who's like, what is this? And maybe I want to start, but I don't want to commit to a coach. There's a book called Existential Kink. I'm not sure if you know it, but essentially it helps you uncover your like subconscious kinky self and those desires that you're subconsciously suppressing because maybe they're not societally acceptable or many other reasons. And what was interesting for me is what came up is that I realized I was subconsciously attracting scarcity into my life. And the reason why was because I like to work and I'm very achievement focused and I like to prove my worth through success. And so I was attracting scarcity so I could prove myself by continually overcoming it. But instead I was just in this pattern of like fighting and then back to scarcity and fighting and back, and my mind was blown. And so I've been working on that a lot. This was a while ago, but that changed everything for me. And now I think, I welcome abundance with my conscious and subconscious fully aligned.
Oh, that one right there is actually one of the most powerful realizations one can have, right? It's because I think so many of us, we're so materially focused, or at least achievement focused, whatever it is that we're looking for or we're running towards, as you said. And I think what we don't realize is sometimes catching what you want is not the same experience as you envision it to be. So you assume, right? You tie all these emotional things to what it is that you want. So when I get this car, when I get this job, when I make this much, then I'm going to be more beautiful, more accepted, more loved, more, whatever it is for you. And then you get that thing and you're like, no. This is not how the story was supposed to go. The happiness was supposed to be right here.
Exactly. And what you say is so true. And, I've experienced it myself. I remember when I bought my first apartment in Sydney where I lived at the time, and my fiance and I had bought it together. So we were so excited, had our champagne, moved in, no furniture, was sitting on the floor. And I was like, I have to get out of here. Like, I have to get out of this apartment. And I was like, this is not me. Like, I don't believe in putting down anchors and roots and the mortgage, which you definitely have in Australia. And I realized like I'd just done it because of the status and because everyone else had. And so I teach a lot of goal setting now. We call it our future map at Future Females, of course. And the process that we take people through is, instead of just setting a goal, because then it's always set by that ego, that masculine energy, you should rather start with your core motivators. which I'm sure you know, but for our listeners, your core motivators are like those actionable values that lie underneath the level of your personality that guide every decision that you make. And so for me, that's freedom and independence and even significance and recognition. And then you define your goals from there. So when you achieve them, it is this feeling because it's so what you need at a heart level, as opposed to just what you think is going to prove yourself at an ego level.
Oh, that is powerful. And as people have been taking this course and they've been learning this on how to do goal setting and coming to terms with maybe their ego goals aren't actually the best goals for them, what have been some of the things that you've heard, like as feedback from some clients you've worked with? Has there been resistance and pushback?
Gosh, I mean, I can share one from my fiance even, because of course he has to prototype everything I do before it goes to the community. So, I mean, he's a CA, he is a CFO, he's very much in the numbers, and he's always been the one focused on making money. Whereas I've always been focused on like the impact and the scale and the fun. And when we did this exercise together, what was really interesting was that his goal ended up being more connection time with family and friends, because that's what he was missing. And my goal ended up being financial, because I needed the profit to invest in the impact. And that's why I was continually hitting my head against the wall. So it was interesting and jarring for that flip, but we've been doing it for 4 years now and it's been working. So
Wow, that's incredible. And you use the word profit. And I think sometimes for people who are building businesses, especially when they're coming from an empowerment space, whether it's self-development, wanting to help, wanting to share a message, and it's really coming from a pure, authentic place, I find that the hurdle they run into the most is generating profit. It's their relationship with money, because there's this underlying feeling that if I want to do good for the world, I shouldn't be profiting from it. Have you ever experienced that?
yeah, I mean, it's actually crazy that you say this today, because I posted a reel about the wealth gap between men and women only owning a third of the world's wealth, which is way more than they did. It was under 10% in 2006. So we're going in the right direction. But I'm getting a lot of love, but I'm also getting so many comments along the lines of celebrating capitalism, how disappointing. And I just want to be like, guys, why are you not embracing this? Like, wealth, it's not everything. And obviously wealth comes not just from money, but having finance, having profit, having money gives you options and gives you freedom at the end of the day. You can still donate it all, but rather make it first and then choose where you want to allocate it, because then you have the decision-making power over your own life. So I see it often. That's just one example. Another that's very close to home is, you're either for profit or for purpose. And when we started Future Females, we did every single thing free because we wanted it to be available and accessible to everyone. But we burnt out. We were funding a company in 3 different countries from my co-founders' like wallets. And our mentor, I just remember, sat with us and he was like, you're teaching women to empower themselves, and yet you're not willing to charge for your own value. Like, how hypocritical is that? And I just thought, you're exactly right. So we started charging, and we had our biggest event ever, was the one where we started selling tickets. So it's definitely an issue, but it's something that we need to work on.
Oh, and you emphasize the choice, right? Kate Gray speaks about money being units of choice. If you don't have choice, you are stuck. You end up having to do things out of necessity anyway, and ending up having to morally compromise or take on a second job that you don't really believe in order to substitute or reach the people you want to reach. And also, let's not forget that with profit, you get to reach more people. The purpose and the message gets more amplified, right? The more money you make, and because you can just help more people. So I love that. I love that your mentor sat you down, because I think so many women need that, right? And I want to get especially based on this line of conversation, I saw a video by Mel Robbins where she spoke about her issue with charging. So she knew that she had this big issue when it came to charging. And she said she developed this philosophy, and basically anytime, no matter what amount people would give her, anytime people would call on the phone and say, Mal, I'd like to book you for this engagement and we're going to pay you X amount. this is her first response. And she wrote it down and she said, I was going to say it every time. And she said, you know, I usually charge double that, but I'm willing to speak to you and see if we can come to a mutual agreement. And I thought that is so important. And the reason I'm asking you this is I want to know, did you have to develop philosophies or principles or practices that allowed you to get comfortable starting to ask for money?
That's a really good question. Do you know, I think a couple of things. So I felt comfortable asking for money, but once it started coming in, I felt a huge burden of responsibility. And I think that often coaches can feel like that. I felt responsible for someone else's outcome, which is impossible as a coach. You can give people the framework, but they still have to take their own journey. And so I started associating money with that stress and anxiety, and almost went backwards after I'd gone forwards. I'm a marketer. I've marketed other people's products for 10 years. So putting a price tag on it wasn't too hard for me. I know other people obviously struggle with that, but yeah, after it started coming in. And then I actually sometimes share my first year of revenue graph with people, and it starts going up. And in about month 9, it just drops to 0. And it's not because my campaign stopped working, it's because I turned it off. Because I was like, I can't handle this anymore. I feel the stress of everyone else's businesses. I've got 30 clients and I need all of their businesses to go well. And I don't even have the time to grow my own. And like really just mind fucked myself. I don't know if we can put that in the recording. You can beep me later. So that was one thing. And then the second thing that I experienced that came to a mindset later, and I was discussing with my partner last night, was I was building a business before Future Females, and it started going really well. Like it was growing super quickly, also in the social media coaching space. My fiance quit his job and came on board. We started hiring a team. We were traveling the world, and expenses started equaling revenue, and we weren't growing anymore. And then I felt trapped. I felt like I can't make a wrong decision. If I make even one wrong move, the whole thing will collapse. We won't be able to pay our rent. And what I've realized that has flowed through to now is me not actually even wanting to know what my financial position is. Or not now, but after that, and just blocking it out completely. So personal stories, but it's something that I've had to work through a lot.
Oh, what you're sharing is actually something I have heard, and it's something that is quite common. I believe I've even done it. And it's almost the overwhelm of a feeling like if I don't look at it, it won't impact me. Like it won't catch up with me. So, I know a lot of people on this call are relating in some way or another. For, some people, it is a money thing. They either so deeply in debt, or they're starting to make money, or they've got some sort of a burden with money and they're refusing to look at it. For some people, it's something completely different, a relationship falling apart, their health, or whatever it is. And they're like, what, if I don't go to the doctor and the doctor actually tells me I'm sick, I'm not sick. Or if I don't speak to my partner and I don't tell them what the issues are, maybe there are no issues. So how did you know, like if we just, so how did you actually start the process of getting comfortable looking at your finances and starting to deal with them and starting to work through them?
I'm a very positive person naturally. I'm like, if anyone else has done the Enneagram, I'm like the enthusiastic visionary. Like I just look forwards. I never look back. But what I realized is that I was repeating my mistakes. And also, when I'm coaching goal setting and visioning, I always talk about the law of inertia, which is you'll keep moving in the same direction unless acted on by like a big external force. And that becomes your life trajectory. And that's often why you'll make a decision, or you'll set a New Year's resolution, or you'll create a habit. And then a few days later, you're back, or even months. And you wonder, like, how can I break this pattern? And so that's what I realized. I was repeating my patterns. I was running launches, and they were successful, but they weren't incrementally succeeding against each other. So I really had plateaued. And it was entirely because I was building from zero every time, because I wasn't allowing that self or business reflection. Practically, how I do it is just block time. It's so easy to think looking backwards doesn't grow. And so rather like create content or do my ad campaigns, but blocking that time and just having a really strict process. I do it with my co-founder once a month, just going through everything in detail. That's what I do.
Oh, that's great. And I think for me, something I had to start implementing, and I teach and coach forgiveness, trauma healing, that kind of stuff. And in the process of healing, I always speak about being comfortable with discomfort. And in the same way, I think even with this, it's so important to realize that discomfort doesn't kill you. And when you can start being easy and acknowledging that this is uncomfortable, and you give it a, you even verbalize it, say it out loud, like as you're pulling up your financial records, you're like, this is actually really uncomfortable, and just keep going, because there's something about not saying something that just makes it like the spooky, thing under the bed. If you don't look, it's always there. You're like, is there something under my bed?
That's very true. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were discussing before as well, which is like me wanting to attract scarcity into my life. It's kind of dichotomous with now not even wanting to look at where the scarcity might be. But I like to just, change my frame and perspective. And instead of looking at this as a gap to performance, I look at it as an opportunity to think differently and to be innovative. And you asked, future females, I came up with the name in my head, but I spend a lot of time thinking about what it means. And for us, it's all about embracing the future of. So how can you be ahead of your competitors by understanding your gap and not just continually doing the same thing the whole time? So what we do as a team is celebrate the gaps. Like we missed a lot of our KPIs last year. Granted, they were massive and it kind of sucks. And as you said, you sit in that uncomfortable stage, but then you all have a common enemy to fight against, and it is that gap to your goals. So for anyone with teams, that's what we do. We run a creative brainstorming against all of the gaps and just set a path from there of actions.
That is so incredible. And speaking about businesses and women starting businesses, and a lot of virtual and online businesses have taken off, and social media based businesses. And what I'm finding to be, the biggest question amongst people, whether they're running a business, starting a brand, starting a personal brand, is that inconsistency in the algorithm. So whether it's the social media algorithm or the algorithm of life, I'd say, how should people, or how do you cope with, the uncomfortability of a changing climate that you can't control?
I think it's important to recognize that, and I'll just use Instagram as an example, but I mean, most social media platforms work the same. They're just trying to create the best experience for their members. So when you log in without your entrepreneur hat on, you want fresh content, you want personal content, you want engaging content that's like the last piece of content you engaged with. And so when I'm creating content, I just like to follow that principle as well. You can spend so much time digging into the algorithm, and of course I coach this, so we could, but at the end of the day, it's just about continually adding more and more value for your audience. I used to really, this is a common mistake that I see, and I used to do it. And it's basically sharing like Googleable posts. So you've got a quote, but it's been 10 places before. You've got your tips carousel and everything on it is right, but it doesn't distinguish you against anyone else in any particular way. What I believe life favors is the storytelling. And so like they may be your 5 tips, but why? Like how have you implemented them and how have they worked for you? And you mentioned Kate Gray before. She does this so beautifully, sharing snippets of her life and anecdotes through storytelling and educating at the same time. So I think when it comes to your personal brand, it's actually about like self-inquiry first, and then turning it into the content you can distribute. Also, that's where your wealth of knowledge is. So that's the easiest place. The second thing I would say, and this is obviously Gary Vee, but is document, don't create. The simplest way to think about stories is it's like the reality TV show of your life. And you might think it's mundane, but your new followers don't, because who doesn't want to see inside someone else's world? And then the third, because you did ask about the algorithm, is you just need to jump on the new features, right? If you look at Instagram and Reels, I posted an IGTV as a test on one day and a reel the next. And the IGTV, the long form video, got 1,400 views, and then the reel got 29,800 views. So that's like 200% more. So sorry, 2,000% more. So who wouldn't be creating a reel over an IGTV? And I know, again, it can make people uncomfortable because it's a new feature, it's a new strategy, and you feel silly when it comes to reels. But just do the thing that's working for Instagram, and then it'll also work for you.
And, you know, with social media, I feel like it's such a microcosm of society overall. I think it's just become so intertwined with who we are. And one thing I always find interesting, even on a personal level, on a, you know, universal level, is when you post something that you think people are going to love, you know, like you were speaking about, you know, the sharing and the content creation, and then you don't get the amount of likes that you projected you would get. Like, you're like, or, you know, you don't get, like, you know, the validation, the commenting, whatever it is. It's very similar to life, right? When you do a good job, or you feel like you're doing a good job and you're not getting that validation. So how can people, or at least how do you move forward when you're feeling like, I'm doing the work, but I'm just not getting the validation or reward? How do you keep that momentum going forward?
Yeah. So firstly, I just turned the like count off because then I know that the post didn't perform, but no one else knows. And to be honest, it kind of sucks when you think someone else is coming to your page and looking at the like count. So I turned that off first thing. So that's not even a consideration. But then more seriously, I have a principle and then like a practical thing to focus on. The principle is consistency over perfection. Not every piece of content is going to be a hit. And actually, the algorithm means you're not competing against everyone else. Your post is competing against all of your previous best posts. So it's being shown to 10% of your audience who engage with you most. If they engage more on that piece, it'll be shown to more. If they engage less, it'll be shown to less. So you're actually in a fight against yourself. So you're winning either way, is the perspective that I like to have on it. But then also, just note where your focus is, because like you're building a business, right? Most people, if you're not an influencer only, you're building a business that requires sales, and those sales are probably not happening on social media. Social media is building awareness at the very high level, like we'll call it the top of the funnel. You need people to come off social media, typically into your email list. Like, no business should only have one or the other. You need social and email, and then they're buying from you. So you don't want to spend all of your time focused on follows or likes or even comments. You rather want to focus on your sales, and then how many of your email leads are buying, and then how many of your followers are joining your list and are of the right persona. I mean, what's tough is social media is so visible, but we call it a vanity metric. Like, it feels really good to have more followers, but do you know what 100 new followers is going to drive in terms of revenue for your business? I think basically no one knows that. So then why focus there?
That is so important to note, because I saw an influencer actually, or a business person / influencer. They've got about 1 million followers, or 1,000,005, or like 1.5 million. And they were speaking about, you know, the fact that yes, their like counts have decreased tremendously. And it is, you know, obviously on an ego level, it's something where they're like, oh, people don't like me anymore. But then she went on to say, you know, at the same time, like, her business is still consistently performing. So, you know, where does she pay attention? You know, like, even though she's still thriving here, she doesn't want to lie that it does impact her, that her content is not performing, right? So it's like, it's that human element, I think, that is, you know, at play consistently, I think.
I find it really interesting as well, you know, or almost jarring when you know a business is doing really well because you followed them for years. Maybe you've been in a program, and then you go to their social media and you're like, but you have 3,000 Instagram followers. Like, how are you doing this? And we forget, like, social media is just one strategy in your overall business ecosystem. It's important because people use it as a search engine now, so you have to be on there, but it's just one, and it can even be a minor part of everything that you're doing.
Oh, such a strong differentiator. So in the past 2 years, things, or at least now going on to 3 years, things have been very interesting for the larger collective. And people, have struggled with different things in their lives going, moving forward. How have the past 2 years been for you, and how have you been growing or navigating these changing times?
Yeah, so gosh, in April 2020, Future Females was an offline events business. We were hosting in 35 cities. We're now in 55, but at the time, we were hosting a physical event or workshop every month. I was actually, I flew to San Fran to attend a physical conference. And on a personal level, when South Africa shut down the borders, not being a citizen, I couldn't get back. So I was actually stuck out of the country, away from my team, my fiance, my life, everything for 9 months until the end of October. So firstly, the whole business had to change in a month. And of course, I was worried that it would just crumble. And secondly, I had to come to terms with being apart from everyone and the personal growth that required. We did a lot of things. We pivoted offline to online. Luckily, our event hosters all came on board. We had to take our workforce online so that also I could see what they were doing and chat to them. I think being in entrepreneurship, it was probably not as hard for us as it was for others, because the demand for our programs was very different, but we also had to change our products a lot. So what we focused on, and one of our values is community driven, is just listening. Someone asked me in a previous interview, like, where do you think Future Females will be in 5 years? And I just said, I have absolutely no idea. I can't even answer in 1 year, because I'm going to run another survey. I'm going to ask people what they want, and then I'm going to make that. And that's how we've been able to grow. So on the business front, a lot of hustle, to be fair, a lot of hustle and a lot of commitment to consistency. That's our whole thing. Even if one person shows up on a webinar, we're going to host it that month. And that, I think, has seen us through. On a personal front, I realized that I can genuinely run an online business from anywhere. And that might sound ironic because I travel so much now, but my goal for 2020, for the 5 years before, was to live every month in a different country. And I had canceled that in 2019 because I had started building up a team and we were in the office. And so then COVID forced me to achieve my goals. And I realized that it was possible. I think I'm a big proponent of designing the life you want to live and then building the business that can deliver on that, and not the other way around.
That is such an incredible strategy. I love, love, love that. Building a business that fits your life and what you want for your life. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. And for people who aren't as, because you come across as someone who's so goal-driven, who's so focused, who knows exactly where you want to get to. For people who don't have that level of clarity, whether it's because they, in depression, or they're going through things, or they've just never had that level of clarity. Where did you begin, or have you just been this certain and clear your whole life?
I think I just sound certain, so I'm appreciating the feedback, because I honestly don't know what I'll be doing next year. So I haven't always had the clarity at all. I mean, I've started businesses, I've closed down 3, I still run 2. Future Females does so many things because I'm quite indecisive. But I think what really changed things for me was my third business. It was a tech platform, and I was in Sydney and it was going really well. We had raised a couple of rounds of funding and built a team, and it was a recruitment marketplace. So we'd built like everything end to end, and I'm like a tech geek, so I was loving it. And we took it to market and no one wanted it. We couldn't monetize, we ran out of money, we couldn't raise more funding. I lost my job, obviously, had to make the whole team redundant as well. And that was the lowest point in my career, emotionally, as well as the ego hit. And it was also the point where I realized, like, I was left with nothing because I hadn't started with what really lit me up first. So what I have clarity on is the lifestyle that I want to live. What I have no clarity on is what I'm going to do in the business to deliver that. I just figure it out as I go along. I love this quote. It's Be committed to your vision, but agnostic of the approach. Like, what is your vision? And I always start with for you, and then for the world, then for you in the world, and then for your business, because the business should always come last. Otherwise, you may end up where I did, which was sacrificing everything for a business that didn't end up making it.
Oh. And that bounce back from being at this place where you rock bottom emotionally, financially, you've sacrificed, and you saw one outcome coming out of it, and you had to pivot and just change everything. What did that process of rebuilding yourself look like emotionally?
I made a lot of gin. I decided I'm going to be a gin connoisseur. I deal with stress by jumping into action. I think you often go one way or the other. My partner freezes, I jump into action with zero thought. So I started importing copper stills and making all of this gin, and quickly realized that that wasn't for me, but I guess it was my creative outlet. But to be serious as well, emotionally, that's the point when I finally was able to move from Australia. I was there for 18 years. I wanted to leave. I just had never had the impetus. And so I'm actually grateful now, because that's when my whole life changed. That's when I completely lost my ego, because I had no network. I had no reputation in South Africa. And so I was building from absolute zero. And there was a freedom that came with that I see in hindsight. So the emotional journey for me was really just, if I strip back all of this ego-related stuff around who I am, what's actually left? And that's when I had clarity on my lifestyle. And so the business that I started was called the Growth Academy. And I remember I went to meet a friend of mine, a mentor, and told him, I'm going to start this course business teaching people to do their marketing. And he was like, no one's going to want that. Like, instead, start an agency and do it for people. And he said, and I'll fund you. And I was like, what? Like, 1 week into business and getting offered funding, and past me would have been like, amazing, we're starting an agency. But because I had had that time and that low point, I was like, no. My non-negotiables are, I don't have to have FaceTime with clients unless I want to. I don't have to build a team, and I can be wherever I want. And if I build an agency, I'll just be beholden to all my different clients. So I could comfortably say no, even though it would have moved me forwards financially, but I'm very grateful for that now.
Man, that is such a journey. But you've also been a speaker. So, that's such a different skill set as well, stepping from one, the creating and running a business, and then stepping onto stages, and, people being invested in you as Lauren, and not just, the CEO of Future Females. So what was that step like for you? Was it exhilarating? Was it petrifying? How did it feel?
I loved it. Oh my gosh. I think once you start speaking, you never go back. I've always enjoyed public speaking, to be honest, and I love the personal connection, but I also enjoy impact at scale. So I was sharing with you just before, I didn't have intentions to speak. Brian just phoned me one day and was like, would you like to speak on stage at this conference I'm hosting? And I, of course, said yes. And I was planning to coach on social media, on Facebook advertising, feeling very confident. And then a few days before, he phones me, he's like, look, Lauren, Paul O'Mahony is now confirmed, and he's selling social media. So you should sell something else. I was like, Brian, my entire business is social media. What am I going to speak on? But I didn't want to miss the opportunity. So I just said, cool, no problem. And I wrote a different talk in 3 days. It's actually now one of my main offerings. It's helping other people build a community to launch a course too. But I just embraced it. So yeah, that was my journey to speaker. It wasn't particularly strategic, but I jumped at it. It was awesome.
I love it. And it makes me think of a quote where it says, say yes now and figure it out later. And I think that's exactly what you did. You're like, yes, I'm there, I'll do it, and I'll figure it out. And a lot of people are petrified. A lot of people have seen opportunities in love, business, wherever travel pass them by because they're so afraid. They're so afraid of not being good. And, you know, do you have any tips for people who are almost paralyzed by their own fears, by their own internal dialogues as to how they can start moving forward, how they can start saying yes and then figure it out on the jump down?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple of things that I'll share. And for me, I kind of have mantras that help me through situations. So I can share a couple. One of them is, if anyone can do it, I can do it. Like, if it is physically possible for any other human being, which I also am, to get on a stage and speak about something they know, then it's also physically possible for me. And so the only barrier has to be mental. And so then when I start thinking like that, it's the self-limiting beliefs that come up for me. And I just spend a lot of time journaling against those. The second thing is, and I have this tattooed on me and it just says, "This is temporary." Everyone thinks it's a joke, but but it's talking about the skin. I'm like, you literally have this one life. So why would you pass up an opportunity for an experience? Probably why I have a 5.5-week-old puppy downstairs. So I haven't, I guess, always been this positive, and I get imposter syndrome like anyone else. My gosh. I remember when I was invited to host Africa's first Women in Tech conference, and I got there and I was doing my slides in the car. I was like, okay, it's gonna be fine. And I was sitting in that front row and they called my name. I was emceeing the day and I was like, I'm just not going to go up. Like, it's going to be fine. I'm just going to sit here. Like, they'll get bored of calling my name. And I was completely frozen. But I think once you start, then you start that positive momentum and it's easier. One of our practices internally at Future Females is called consistent imperfect action. And it's like, maybe you're not there today. Maybe you're not going to stand on stage to 10,000 people. Maybe you're going to do an Insta story with your face in it. Or maybe you're not even going to have your face in it. Maybe you're going to show people your breakfast, and that for you is a stretch. And that's totally fine. Just consistent imperfect action, one thing a day, and like it incrementally builds on itself.
Mm. And you keep saying and you keep emphasizing that you have not always been this way. So when did your evolutionary journey really begin for you in your mind, where you're like, I started becoming this person, I started becoming this yes person? When can you, like, if you had to put together a timeline, would you say that kicked in for you?
Yeah. I think I've always been a yes person. Like, I have an adventurous spirit, but I haven't always been confident in me as a brand, as putting my face out there. And I can tell you exactly when I decided to embrace Lauren Dallas. And, you know, I shared with you the liquidation that I went through. And after that, I started the Growth Academy. And I started it with the logo on Instagram, on Facebook, as you do, built the website. Nowhere on any of these platforms could you see me. Like, you could not tell who had started this business. I call this hiding behind your logo, and I'm sure some people listening are doing this. I was hiding behind my logo because I was shit scared of failing again. I was like, I don't know if I, as an individual, can handle another failure. So I'm just going to start this logo, and if that fails, doesn't matter because it's not me. I really struggled to grow the business in that format. And I remember the turning point was one day, someone sent me a direct message on Instagram and it said, paraphrasing, hi, the Growth Academy, my business is really struggling. We're almost out of money. I'm worried if I make the wrong turn now when it comes to my Facebook ads, you know, I'll have to shut the whole thing down. Please help me. And I read this and I was like, hi, the Growth Academy. Like, this person is opening up to me, being so vulnerable about their journey. And I'm too scared to be like, hey, I'm Lauren, let me try and help you. So that's when I decided, cool, let me try this personal branding thing. Being a marketer as I am, I A/B tested the whole thing. I was like, I'm going to try selling as the Growth Academy. I'm going to try selling as Lauren. And of course, it went like 5 times better on every level. It felt better, as well as being more profitable, when I just embraced being me. And then when I started seeing that it was good for the business, I started going, well, this is what I have to do. Actually, there's no time for me to be worried because the business needs this. Yeah.
Oh, that is incredible. And you had mentioned as well with the coaching, and I think there's actually a pretty good link there where you said, as a coach, you used to take so much responsibility for delivering 100% success, right? And where are you now? How do you view coaching now that allows you to be liberated and still deliver the best performance for your clients?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I mean, I believe that coaching is giving people the frameworks to be able to think for themselves. Whereas consulting is very much like, this is exactly what to do. And to be honest, my style is a bit of both. Like, if I know what you're going to do, I'm just going to tell you. Like, I'm a very direct person. But what I've realized is not everyone is going to achieve the outcomes. And it's important. I mean, I coach coaches, and one of the things that I work with them on is personal boundaries. Because, if you allow someone to phone you, then they're not going to go back to the Facebook group to chat, just using a very tactical example. So I think as a coach, you're giving your energy every single time. And so if you're not preserving yourself, you will burn out. And I've seen this so much in our industry. So I've really learned to put those boundaries in place. And in my last mastermind, which is the program where I teach coaches, I remember one of my students was like, one of the things you've taught me without practically teaching it was boundaries, because you set them in week one and you held us to them every week. And she was like, and I don't see it as a negative. It's like helped my learning journey because I have to also apply before I come back to you. So I think, I think that's what's important, making sure you have enough in your cup to give in those sessions.
Oh, I love that answer. And we're going to go into our final 2 rapid fire questions. And the first one is, what is real success to you?
Freedom. Total, complete, and utter freedom. My fiance loves to play this game, like, what's your perfect day? And he's always got the same. And I'm like, nothing like it was yesterday.
Oh, I love that so much. I had an inkling you might say that. And the final answer, question is, what is something about Lauren Dallas that we will not find on Google?
That is a very good question. Normally I say I make gin, but I already told you that one. I think on a personal level, I think that what you wouldn't know is that I really, really care about my partner. And I share this because we're meant to get married last Friday. And I'm so involved in female empowerment and in celebrating women. And I actually shared this post. I also love to celebrate men. Like, I love to celebrate the men that have lifted us up and supported us to achieve what we've achieved. I love celebrating Brian and Saj and the whole Real Success team and the role they've played in getting me to where I am today as well. So you probably would never Google that, but I do feel like it's important to share, because female empowerment is not about disempowerment of men. It's just about embracing everyone as a collective to reach equality. And that's what's important to me.
Oh, perfect. Lauren, thank you so much for your graciousness and your time. This has been phenomenal.
Of course. Thank you for having me, everyone. Thank you.
I loved all the twists and turns this interview took. It was so incredibly powerful. As usual, please let us know what you think. It has been an honor to serve you this week, and I look forward to doing it again next week.